What's up, everybody? This is Jeep Stuff Talk Show, and today I'm going to give you some tips on buying a Jeep Cherokee. This is what I look for as soon as I go and look at a Jeep Cherokee. So let's go ahead and get into the show. Now, if I'm going to go look at a Jeep Cherokee at a lot or somebody selling privately, the first thing that I usually do is crawl underneath. And that is under the driver's side where the doors are, and I start to look at the unibody. And I don't only look at the unibody, but I peck on it. I make a fist something like this, and I begin to peck on both sides and the bottom of the unibody, from the lower control arms from the front end all the way back to the rear end. I've seen a lot of unibodies on Jeep Cherokees rot out around the back wheel arch. So make sure you check the back real good and peck real good. And I want you to check your leaf spring hangers in the back also, because I bought a Jeep Cherokee once and jacked it up. When I bought it on my way home, it was making a clunking noise, so I jacked it up, and the leaf spring hangers were just setting up in there. They were broke clear off. Well, they were rusted clear off, and when I jacked it up, the leaf springs came that far from the body. So I just let it back down on there and drove it like that for a little bit until I got the money to fix it, because the bolts were so rusted you couldn't get it out. So make sure you look over that unibody, okay? Once you're done with the front of the door all the way back to the hatch, make sure you go up and look on the driver's side of the unibody where the steering box bolts. If you go on the driver's side and look to your left in the fender well, you'll see 3 bolts, and the older ones are known for cracking. And usually how you can tell if they're cracked, if you make a sharp turn, the box will move and the unibody will move and it will pop. I had one that did that, and you can get a plating kit for this, but you have to take in consideration this is more cost and more work, and if you don't know how to weld and all that stuff, you're going to have to pay somebody to do it. So make sure you check the bolts in the unibody right there where the steering box bolts. Make sure you check all the unibody. Now when it comes to rusting the unibody, rusting through, I've repaired mine, but like I said, it's going to take some more money. If you don't know what you're doing, it's going to take a lot more money because you have to take it to a shop. The second thing I do is check out the floorboards in the hatch. Now the best way to do this is get underneath while you're already under there, and you start pecking on the floor. I peck on all the floor pans. Now in the back, I lift the hatch and I begin to pound the hatch. If the carpet's down really good, I begin to pound the hatch really good, especially around the back fender wells inside the hatch. Right at the bottom, of the floor, I begin to pound there because they are known for rotting out real bad. And if the owner gets mad at you, you might as well just walk away from the vehicle because he's trying to screw you anyway. I've never really had an owner get mad at me for doing this. They knew I was looking for some rust, looking for some problems, maybe to negotiate with. But if it's totally rusted out, it's not worth going. I've seen people buy Cherokees that's rusted clear out and the unibody's good, and they put all kinds of money in the floors and stuff, but I don't recommend doing that. So make sure you check your floor pans. They usually rust out in the back hatch area on the floor. They're the ones that, that's the places that they usually rust out. And while you're under the Jeep, the best thing that I like to do is check out the front end parts. Check out the axles. Grab the axles, see if they got any play in them. Look at the tie rod ends. Look at the pitman arm. Look the whole front end over to see if it needs any work. Go to the back there where the dry shaft is. See if there's any play in the transfer case. See if there's any play in the rear end, and make sure the U-joints are good in the drive shaft itself. And after I'm done with underneath, I pop the hood. And if the guy had it running before you got there, which that's mostly the case because everybody that I go and look at Jeeps, they have it running before I get there. I guess they want to make sure it starts or something, I don't know. So let it cool down. First thing you need to do is pop the radiator cap to see how nasty it is inside. If it's gummed up real bad, it's not an issue. It could be a head gasket blowed, but usually they get gummed up, pretty bad anyway. And that's another cost. That's another maintenance thing that you have to do. You might have to take it somewhere if you don't know what you're doing, and that's more of a cost. So check out the antifreeze in there, make sure it's full, make sure there ain't nothing missing, and make sure it ain't gummed up real bad. If you're good there, stick the radiator cap back on and check the oil. Make sure that it's not milky, make sure it doesn't look like, it's got like a metallic look to it in the light. Make sure the oil looks good. Now, most of the time, the AW4s in a Cherokee, people don't really change the fluid in them, so they're going to be a little bit dark. Make sure you check that though. Go ahead and pull the dipstick out for the transmission fluid and check that and make sure it's full. After you discovered everything checks out underneath the hood, what you want to do is start this vehicle. You want to start the 4.0. Now the 4.0, they go for a long time. You're looking at 300,000 miles, 400,000 miles, okay? I've had them anywhere from 180,000. The red one I had 360,000. I've had 200,000. It just may vary, but they're pretty tough engines. But the thing you want to listen for is a knock. Now, these engines do rattle a little bit like a diesel, and a lot of people say, oh, that's not normal. But 99% of Jeep Cherokees I've heard, they make a little bit of a chatter noise, and it's normal. It's just how they're designed. But if you hear a clunking noise or some other noise that doesn't sound right, you want to probably go ahead and pass it up. But if it has a little bit of valve train noise, you should be okay. After you get done checking out the motor and make sure it checks out, you want to take this thing for a test drive. And you want to take it for a good test drive, not just down the road or, real quick, because he might have changed the oil in the vehicle, or he might have topped the antifreeze off. So if you take this thing, a couple miles down the road, get the vehicle warmed up, get the vehicle shifting, get the vehicle using whatever it may use. That way you can come back and pop the hood. So I recommend going a couple miles down the road and coming back. Make sure you drive this thing till it gets up to the operating temperature. And when it gets up to the operating temperature, go a little bit more, like I said, then turn around and go back. And when you get back, lift the hood, see if there's any oil leaking. Check the oil. Make sure the antifreeze is not mixing with the oil. Make sure when you were driving it, make sure it was shifting right, it felt right, no misses, no bucks, no anything like that. And while you're doing that, make sure everything works. Make sure there's no wiring problem. Make sure everything works, the wipers, the blinkers, and all that stuff. Make sure that stuff checks out. You want to check the headlights, make sure they work. And you definitely want to check the tail lights on the driver's side if you're looking at 97 and up, because they tend to screw up and they tend to have wiring problems altogether. Even 97 and 98 have wiring problems with the wipers and the column, and it's just a hit or miss with those. And while you're doing that and talking to the person, let the vehicle cool down and make sure you look at the radiator again and check inside the reservoir. And if everything checks out, you should be good to go. While you were driving it, make sure it didn't pull to the right or the left. Make sure it didn't have death wobble. Make sure everything checked out, and you should be absolutely fine. And if you follow these steps, I promise you, you have an awesome and fun vehicle to build, to off-road, to go off-roading on the weekends. Now, some of the stuff that I mentioned in this video can be addressed. If the head gasket's blowed, you can fix it. If the radio or the radiator's gummed up, you can flush it, put a new radiator on it. The limit, it's you. How mechanically inclined are you? That's how I actually got my Jeeps cheap. Some people say they're blowed up, and they're not really blowed up. You get them with blowed head gaskets, and people don't want to do the work. Things like that. And another thing to check on Jeep Cherokees, this is super common, is the manifold. The manifold's probably going to be leaking. So that's another cost that you do have to address because it's super annoying. So the sky is the limit. How much do you want to work, or how much you want to pay for somebody else to do this work? Like I said, that's how I get mine super cheap. As long as the body and the unibody is in great shape, as long as it runs. But if it has a head gasket problem, manifold problem, and stuff like that, I can fix that stuff myself. Even transfer case problems, people don't want to screw with it, so they'll sell them cheap, right? So keep your eye out. If you like messing with vehicles, if you like working on them and you like deals, get on your local Craigslist or your Facebook marketplace and start looking at Jeeps that have problems. I've seen 99 and 2000 Jeeps where the heads are cracked and people don't want to mess with them. So they're going from anywhere from $800 to $1,000 and they're like in mint condition. And the vehicle still runs, it's just the head's cracked. I've seen older Jeeps, the steering box are cracked, you know, right there where the unibody is. It's a super easy fix if you know what you're doing. You can get them super cheap. So if you know what you're doing and you know how to fix things with your hands, you know how to weld, you know how to work on things, you can get a Jeep pretty cheap. Because the Jeep world is full of young kids that really don't know what to do. They're just used to bolting on things, or they're just used to running the tar out of a Jeep, and then when it breaks they don't know what to do and they just sell it and think they're ripping you. But really, if you know what you're doing when it comes to a Jeep, you're usually the one on the good, like that good outcome. Like one of the Jeeps that I got was supposed to be blowed up, wasn't supposed to be any good. It had I supposedly had a bunch of problems. I addressed the problems by putting a steering column in it and just tweaking a little bit of things, and it had a Dana 30 in the front, and the front end was blowed out. And it took me a couple hours on a Saturday to rebuild the front end, and it was super cheap, right? So like I said, it depends what you want to spend, how perfect you want the Jeep, and you know, it's like it's a weight, like how you want to balance it. Because I've seen Jeeps that are in perfect condition, low miles, doesn't need any work, and everything's been taken care of by a professional. You're looking at about $5,000-$6,000 for a Jeep. Or you can go where the Jeep has been taken care of and it's got a wee little bit of rust, and you know, it might need a wheel bearing or a ball joint or something like that. You can get them from anywhere from $2,500 to $3,000. The two doors go for a little bit more. But if you get in the price range that I like, where they need work, you can get them from anywhere from $800 to $1,200, or maybe even $1,500 in decent shape. Or if you have a bunch of motors laying around like I did, you can get Jeep Cherokees that need motors for nearly nothing. They go around here for like $300, $400, $500. Just depends. So it's up to you, but make sure you look over these things before you buy a Jeep Cherokee, because I've seen many times where people just look at the frame or the unibody and they really don't touch it. Touch the unibody, okay? Because I went and looked at an El Camino the other day and the frame looked mint until I pulled down the Rhino line that somebody put over it, and I began to peck on the rear end of the frame of the El Camino, and my fingers started going through it. And I told the guy about it, and he's like, yeah, and he knew that I was on to something. And the price that originally quoted to me, he lowered it by almost $1,000. So don't be afraid to touch the vehicle. Don't be afraid to look at it, and because this is something you're going to purchase with your hard-earned cash. Okay, if you're anything like me, you work for your money. You know, you're not rich. You work for your money, and you're wanting something to build and have fun with. And you work for your money, and you want it to be what you want it to be, okay? Hard-earned cash. And you don't want to just be shy and then get ripped. And like I said, if these have problems, negotiate for it. Don't pay full price. Don't pay $3,500 for something that needs a steering box unibody right there where the bolt's welded or something. You know, negotiate. That's how I get a lot of my deals also. I negotiate. So make sure you check out those things, and happy buying. I don't really mess around on Craigslist. I usually mess around on Facebook Marketplace is the #1 place right now. So make sure you check out all that stuff. Keep that stuff in mind. I just thought I would let you guys know what I go through when I look at these Jeeps, because that's the most common problems that I see right now. Body work to me isn't a big deal. Rust issues at the back quarter panels and the fenders and the doors and the rocker panels, it's not a big deal to me. You can fix that stuff really easy, so that's not a big deal. So I hope these tips helped you. Hit that like button. Leave your feedback in the comments below. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Check me out on Facebook. Check me out on Instagram. Each time that you share this video or like it or watch this video, it helps this channel out a lot. So I just want to let you know that I appreciate each and every one of you guys, and I hope you're having an awesome time, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm Cherokee Ronnie. Stay dirty, my friends.